Good morning, Jena.
Morning, Trish.
Thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me today. I'm Trish Moratto. I am our Senior Communications Manager at SMA America. I'm really excited to dive in with Jena Ramsey this morning. She is our Territory Sales Manager for the Southeast. And in that capacity, Jena gets to do a lot of focus on Puerto Rico. In the last year or so, she spent a lot of time on the island and worked with customers to better understand how federal programs and policies trickle down to the boots on the ground in Puerto Rico. And she has an article coming up in the new PES magazine that we're excited, kind of getting into the weeds and detailing all of this. Jena, could you start by giving us an overview of the current energy landscape in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, Trish, I think the first and probably most important point to note before we get started on this is that PR has set really, really ambitious goals. The Puerto Rican government wants to achieve 100% renewable energy by 2050.
That's a lofty goal.
They certainly are, but don't worry. They have made it possible by setting interim goals, the first of which is 40% by 2025, 60% by 2040, the phase out of coal-fired generation by 2028, and then a 30% overall improvement in energy efficiency by 2040.
Okay, so that seems a little more achievable, especially with the support we're seeing coming down from the federal government, which is very hefty. Now, I know that there's been these two major hurricanes in recent years. How has that impacted the energy ecosystem of the island?
It's certainly true that Puerto Rico has faced significant energy challenges, and they're made worse by stuff like aging infrastructure, dependence on imported fossil fuels, and as you mentioned, the hurricanes. These issues really underscore the urgent need to diversify the energy mix and strengthen the island's resilience.
Well, and I think resilience is the key word there. I've heard a lot about the Puerto Rico Energy Resilience Fund. So can you tell me a little more about that?
As you know, it's a really big deal on the island. And what's happened so far is President Biden signed the Consolidated Appropriations Act into law, which includes $1 billion for the U.S. Department of Energy to establish the Puerto Rico Energy Resilience Fund. The point here really is to improve the resilience of the Puerto Rican electric grid and to focus on the island's most vulnerable households through that process. We do expect the DOE to release at least 2 more funding rounds for the Puerto Rico ERF.
$1 billion is a really big commitment from our federal government. And I know they're doing it in pieces. Last July, we saw that the DOE released $450 million to support residential PV, battery storage installations, consumer protections. There were some educational resources as part of that package. And then fast forward a few months to November, we saw that the DOE selected 3 companies, 5 nonprofits, and 2 hyperlocal organizations for funding. So that seems like a lot that's in process, but we're seeing as soon as this spring that the money has trickled down and the installations are already starting.
That's right. And to add to it, subsequent rounds are expected later in 2024. These will provide investments for energy resilient solutions like community solar, microgrids, and other grid modernization solutions. And what I'm excited about is also the potential partnerships with local groups and workforce training.
Yeah, let's talk about those initiatives. I've heard a lot about the Solar Ambassador Program, which is kind of one of those sub-programs under the Solar Access Program. The aim is to empower local communities towards their own energy independence. So how does that money coming federally actually work in practice?
As you know, I love talking about this one. The community impact here is important to understand. Through the Solar Access Program, the government announced nearly $4 million in Solar Ambassador prizes for community organizations across PR. It's really about these local communities being empowered and feeling empowered, quite frankly. This action helps accelerate the installation of residential solar and battery storage systems on up to 30,000 homes across PR.
That's really exciting. And from what I understand, the organizations will each get their own seed funding, and then they participate in DOE training sessions. And from there, they're actually eligible for further compensation, right?
Correct. And I do want to note that this is based on the number of households they enroll for residential solar systems, as well as battery storage installations.
Well, something else I'm really curious about, living in California, we watch net metering really closely. And I know that there is legislation happening in Puerto Rico too. What can you tell me about that?
So we're certainly keeping an eye on PS 1064, which is proposed to exempt projects with rapid shutdown on any concrete residential roofs. And it's important for 2 reasons. First, the reduction in price. Coming from sales, I do get excited about that. We were able to actually speak with our application engineers, and they calculated about 7 to 10% decrease in price when you exclude those rapid shutdowns. And secondly, and potentially more importantly, is reducing the potential points of failure. So it really is a win-win.
Right. And this actually relates to a study. So the new law requires that the Puerto Rican Energy Bureau conducts a study to evaluate the pros and cons, the costs and benefits of things like net metering, distributed generation technologies, and other stuff too. So small scale solar energy, energy storage systems. So any future changes to that net metering policy is going to be based on this study. So that's kind of the phase in where we are right now. Another question that comes to mind talking about this is we hear all the time about Puerto Rico being a blueprint for renewable energy. How do you see the island solar growth influencing what's happening back here on the mainland?
It really is a super exciting opportunity for PR to kind of act as the blueprint, like you mentioned, for the mainland to model achieving their 100% renewable energy goals. In support of the Puerto Rico energy transition, the federal government has allocated significant funding to contribute to state and local efforts. It's a very big deal.
Yeah, and we can see the Biden administration's deep commitment to this and helping to meet those lofty goals. We've seen Secretary of Energy Granholm's made multiple visits to the island recently. And so we will look forward to seeing if those goals come to fruition. Jena, thank you so much for your time and expertise today. Everybody, make sure to look out for Jena's upcoming article in PES Magazine to learn more details about what's happening in Puerto Rico.
Trish.